This is AM Agenda. Thanks for your company. With me now, Ed Husic and Josh Frydenberg. Coming up, the independent Rob Oakeshott as well, who's announced he's not going to contest at the next election. Ed Husic, first to you. On this idea of a petition that the Rudd supporters will a third of the caucus will sign a petition and bring on a special caucus and resolve this leadership impasse. Is that a good idea? Do you support that?
Well, I think it's all speculation, so I'm not going to be commenting on the ifs, buts and wherewithals about what happens there. Is
it a good idea, though, to bring about a leadership, an end to this leadership impasse?
There are a lot of things that people would want to second guess, what should or shouldn't happen, and I don't see that in this environment, that it's right to just go out and basically pour fuel on those flames.
Would you put your name to a petition?
I'm not going into any speculation.
So what can you say about the leadership this morning? Would you be happy if there was a special caucus to resolve this, or you're not willing to countenance that?
Well, again,
because obviously it's something that Mr. Combe said that he wants resolved. He says it's up to Kevin Rudd to put his hand up, and then you've got Tony Windsor saying that he would support a no-confidence motion in the government if you went to Kevin Rudd.
Well, I mean, the only way in which, in terms of Tony's comments this morning as they've been reported, they'll have any oomph to them is if Tony Abbott wants to channel Malcolm Fraser 1975. It's up to them.
So you believe that it's irrelevant, what Tony Windsor's saying?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that you go on to all sorts of speculation about what may or may not happen, and people are throwing all sorts of things, like I said, fuel on the fire, and I just don't think that's wise at this stage.
But so Tony Windsor saying that he would support a no confidence motion in the government should not really factor into people's thinking within the Labor caucus?
Well, I just think that this will be a matter ultimately decided by caucus. We don't need people from outside caucus, basically, again, using that phrase, putting fuel on the fire. And I said, a few moments ago, that only takes in terms of what Tony said, really just depends on those opposite and whether or not they want to, revisit 1975.
But would you need to test support in the Parliament if there's a new Prime Minister? Does Kevin Rudd have
I've never come here as a constitutional expert.
But does Kevin Rudd have the support of other independents?
Who knows?
Would you think that he would be able to secure that support of the likes of Katter, Wilkie?
I don't believe... look, my firm understanding is this, that people... Obviously, there's been a lot of talk around over the last few weeks in relation to the issue. A lot of it has been, frankly, out there and not necessarily tied to reality. I think people need to take a deep breath and not be putting fuel on the flames.
But it's been confirmed to me this morning that Julia Gillard would not require hands to be put up in a special caucus. You would welcome that, obviously. If there was to be one, that there'd be a secret ballot.
What I welcomed this morning was Craig coming out and Craig recognising, as many caucus members would, and coming back to a point I touched upon a few moments ago, Kieran, we don't need people from outside caucus dictating how the caucus should be run. The caucus ultimately makes its own decision on these things. And, I talked about revisiting Malcolm Fraser. I don't think anyone wanted to revisit Doc Evatt jumping on a table, taking down names about who voted in a particular way on matters before caucus. So I think Craig did the right thing this morning to say, no, the caucus ultimately makes its own mind up on these things, and we'll respect tradition.
Josh Frydenberg, I don't mean to neglect you this morning. Morning
to you.
Yeah, welcome to the program.
The fact that, I've never heard Ed, give an answer that's under 4 minutes long, but he has this morning because he's stonewalling on the leadership. And the fact that you brought your chalkboard with a few names and numbers underneath this table says a lot.
I did play noughts and crosses with you during the break, but whatever.
Well, all your caucus colleagues' names are on it. But no, as far as we're concerned,
did you pull it out then? Pull out the chalkboard.
As far as we're concerned, Kieran, it doesn't matter who's running the Labor Party. It's the Labor Party's record which is on trial at this election. On July the 1st, the carbon tax is going up to over $24 a tonne at a time when it's 85 cents a tonne in New Zealand or $6 in Europe. Australian families are being hit with higher cost of living pressures. The boats still keep coming in with thousands of unauthorised arrivals. Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard are both responsible for these monumental failures. So for us, it doesn't matter who's running the show. We're going to still hold this government to account.
So what about this prospect of the coalition moving a motion of no confidence in the government if it does return to Kevin Rudd? Tony Windsor has said he'd support that. Do you believe it's something that Mr Abbott should seriously consider?
Well, you're dealing in hypotheticals because I don't know what the caucus is going to decide and when it's going to decide that. We're all reminded back what happened in 1983 when Malcolm Fraser thought that he was going to be running against Bill Hayden. He went to Yarralumla and they did the bait and switch on him and he faced Bob Hawke and lost that election. So, you know...
But Mr Abbott has repeatedly said that it's up to the people to decide if you did try to, I suppose, pursue some constitutional quirk or you know, to expedite his way to the Lodge. Would that be a good look?
Well, look, you know, Tony Abbott, Christopher Pyne, the powers that be will make these decisions. I don't know what they're going to be, but we're also dealing in hypotheticals because the Labor Party is tearing itself apart before our eyes at a time when the Australian people want the adults in the room.
You'll be happy to have it done and dusted, though, won't you?
So
at
we're
the end of
tearing
this week?
ourselves apart. We've got like 500 pieces of legislation through. You supported us on what, 87%
Correct.
of those, and you know, life rolls.
13% was pretty bad.
Life rolls on, and yeah, well, it's going to be supplanted by stuff that will scare the boots off people in terms of your side of politics. Handing over $5 billion to polluters is a massive subsidy, and crossing your fingers and hoping that they'll actually reduce emissions.
We'll get to that in a second because Barack
I don't want to
Obama's
get in the way of
speech.
policy.
Well, Barack Obama's speech is very interesting. I do want to get to it, but just quickly, just a quick one, 30 seconds for both of you. Rob Oakeshott departing. Many will say that this is him running from a bad election, that he's facing a loss. He says that that's not the case. I spoke to him. I'll have that interview a bit later. What do you make of this move?
People will say all sorts of things about what you do and put all sorts of motives to them, but frankly, I just want to say, having worked with Rob, that I wish him and his family all the best, and I've really got to admire the way he's worked. I'm Deputy Chair on the NBN committee with him, and can see, particularly in terms of the NBN, how passionately he feels about it. So I wish him all the best.
Josh, your thoughts?
I wish him all the best too. I worked with him on the Public Accounts and Audit Committee. But at the end of the day, he and Tony Windsor and Andrew Wilkie have propped up this government. It's been a disaster for Australia.
Let's go to Barack Obama's speech. A lot of this does, you know, Greg Combe's saying it doesn't resemble direct action much at all. But when you look at these measures, there's no carbon price. He's been precluded from doing that by the Congress. He's got strong language, but a lot of the measures do resemble, from my reading, direct action.
Well, no, I think what needs to be taken out of it too is that, you know, we've had for ages, you know, the coalition say that we'll be leading the pack. We'll be way ahead of the world in terms of addressing this issue. And now you've got the US wanting to move on it. We've had, you know, suggestions that China wouldn't embrace emissions trading. They've started to move down that path. You know, Josh has already mentioned in terms of Europe, people recognise that the smartest way, the most efficient way to do it is to move to a market-based method of managing emissions and seeing their eventual decline and boosting renewables.
And that is something that Barack Obama has conceded himself, that he would rather pursue a market mechanism. It's within... well, it's already happening here.
Now, Kieran, let's have a look at this 20-page strategy that Barack Obama has put out. Not once in 20 pages is there a reference to an ETS, to a cap and trade, or to a carbon tax. Australia's effectively going alone. And in terms of the measures that he's put forward about cleaning up coal-fired power stations, renewable energy, energy efficiency targets, that's our policy. We're ahead of the game in the coalition.
So do you welcome the fact that he is taking a lead in the global talks?
Sure, absolutely. I welcome Barack Obama's statement on this issue and the fact that, you know, the US is going to be doing something about climate change. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to get a global agreement, those big four countries, India, the EU, China and the United States, I mean, the EU is a grouping, but those four need to come together to get a proper outcome, because the rest of the world is...
That's a good thing. We've been able to finish on at least a bipartisan note and come together on that front, because you agree with that?
No, do I agree with him? No, I never agree with him. No, I refuse to deliberately.
You don't want China...
He's happy to pay $24 a tonne for carbon tax.
No, but I think the two inevitables are this. A recognition, we've been having this insane fringe debate about whether or not climate change is real. I think, as President Obama said, that debate is obsolete. And what is also obsolete is resisting a notion that market-based mechanisms aren't the most efficient way to get this job done.
Ed Husic, Josh Frydenberg, gents, have a good day.
Thanks, Kieran.
I don't want
Thanks,
to.
Ed.
No. If he's having one, I don't want to.
Your day could get better.
A big day ahead, a big 48 hours ahead. Thanks for being with us on AIM Agenda. A quick break. And when we return, I'll have Barnaby Joyce and also Rob Oakeshott coming up in the next half hour.